3 minutes ago, Sophie opened Edward's private drawer and found the diary entry that shattered her forever. "Harry is lost to us," Edward wrote. "He chose her over everything, and I fear he will destroy what remains." Sophie froze, tears falling onto the page. This isn't gossip. This is the Duke of Edinburgh's own words betraying his nephew in secret. Tonight we reveal the hidden rift that turned quiet loyalty into devastating silence, and why Sophie may never look at Edward the same way again. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The discovery happened on a quiet evening at Bagshot Park, the kind of ordinary night when Sophie expected nothing more than old letters or forgotten receipts. She slid open the drawer in Edward's study, searching for a pen, and her fingers brushed against a small leather-bound book tucked at the back. The moment she opened it, the world tilted. The exact entry stared back at her in Edward's familiar handwriting. "Harry is lost to us. He chose her over everything, and I fear he will destroy what remains." Sophie's hands began to shake so violently that the page blurred. She read the words aloud in a voice that cracked on every syllable, the leaked audio capturing the raw horror as tears spilled onto the ink. The room felt suddenly too small, too cold, as if the walls themselves were closing in on the betrayal she had just uncovered. Within minutes, the palace reacted with full lockdown. Doors slammed shut at Bagshot, phones were confiscated, and frantic calls flew between Sophie and Anne, voices rising in disbelief and shared grief. Aides scrambled through corridors, whispering urgent orders while the news spread like fire through every level of the institution. An insider close to Sophie later revealed the chilling detail no camera caught. Sophie's whispered question to Edward when he walked in moments later, "How could you write this?" A plea so broken, it echoed long after the conversation ended. That single question carried the weight of a wife who had just watched her husband condemn his own nephew in secret, turning the man she loved into someone she barely recognized. The diary entry had not appeared from nowhere. It was the breaking point after a secret family summit only days earlier, a tense gathering where grievances long buried finally spilled onto paper. 3 hidden reasons had pushed Edward to the edge, reasons he could no longer keep locked inside. The first was the growing fear that Harry's independence was pulling focus from the slimmed-down monarchy the family needed. The second involved alleged attempts to rewrite royal history in ways that felt like betrayal to Edward. The third cut deepest of all echoes of past family wounds that Edward refused to let reopen under any circumstances. Each reason had festered in silence until the Duke decided the only way forward was to commit his darkest thoughts to the page. The palace held its breath, knowing the single entry had just drawn a line that could never be uncrossed. Sophie remained locked in shock. The husband she once trusted, now the author of this private condemnation. The air inside those ancient walls thickened with dread, because everyone understood this diary discovery was only the beginning of something far larger and more devastating. But this diary entry didn't appear from nowhere. It was the breaking point after years of buried resentment finally spilling onto paper. Edward was always the silent one, the brother who smiled and stayed out of the spotlight. But behind closed doors a storm brewed. Private letters, deleted messages, and tearful arguments reveal how the Duke came to see Harry as a threat to the monarchy's future. Tonight we read the words that turned quiet affection into cold judgment, and show the moment Edward decided to write the truth he could never say aloud. The arguments began in the dead of night, when the palace slept and the 2 brothers thought no one could hear. Edward's voice would rise in the quiet rooms of Bagshot Park, sharp and unrelenting. "Harry is drifting too far." Each warning carried the weight of a man who saw the future of the monarchy slipping away, his eyes burning with a fear he could no longer hide. Charles would listen at first, pleading for understanding, but the distance only widened until those calls became battlegrounds where love and duty collided without mercy. Those late-night clashes left scars that never showed in public, yet they deepened with every passing month until the air between them grew thick with unspoken accusations. In the quiet aftermath of one especially brutal confrontation, Edward poured his heartbreak into the diary, the pages trembling under his pen. "Harry is lost to us," he wrote. The ink smudged by tears he refused to let fall in front of anyone. "He chose her over everything, and I fear he will destroy what remains." Those words captured the exact moment Edward understood the shift. Harry was no longer the brother he had protected since childhood. He had become the threat standing in the way of the Crown's survival. Secret texts between Edward and Sophie revealed the same growing frustration. Messages passed in the dead of night when no one else could see. Edward would write of mounting concerns, and Sophie would reply with quiet agreement, the two of them slowly aligning against the independence Harry refused to surrender. The exchanges were clipped, urgent, laced with the fear that one son's freedom could cost the entire institution its future. Charles never saw those messages, yet their shadow hung over every conversation, turning uncle against nephew in ways no public smile could hide. The inner conflict tore Edward apart in ways no outsider could see. He loved Harry with a fierceness that defined him, yet the pull of duty and the monarchy refused to release its grip. Nights became battles within his own heart, loyalty to his nephew, clashing against loyalty to the institution he had sworn to protect. Success in one direction meant suffering in the other, and the weight of that choice slowly crushed the joy out of him. Then came the unsent letter Edward wrote, but never delivered, the one that still shocks with its venom. In careful handwriting, he called Harry selfish beyond redemption, warning that his choices would leave nothing but ruin in their wake. The words were never mailed, yet they existed, proof that the Duke had already crossed a line in his mind. Publicly, the family still smiled for cameras, arms around shoulders, unity on display. Privately, the venom had already poisoned everything, turning shared history into something cold and unrecognizable. That final incident wasn't just about Harry. It threatened the entire symbolic future of the family. Edward didn't write the diary entry on impulse. A single explosive incident hidden until now convinced him Harry had crossed the line of no return. From leaked conversations to alleged attempts to rewrite royal history, the evidence piled up until the Duke had no choice. We expose the backroom crisis that forced a quiet uncle to put his darkest thoughts on paper, and why Sophie can never unsee them. The crisis meeting unfolded in a small, locked chamber at Bagshot Park, the kind reserved for decisions too dangerous for daylight. Edward sat at the head of the table, face carved from stone, and declared with quiet finality, "He is lost to us." No raised voice, no visible anger, just the calm certainty of a man who had weighed every consequence and found no other path. The table held a thin stack of sealed files, each one a testament to boundaries crossed and trust eroded. 3 specific incidents stared back at him in black and white. First, leaked conversations where Harry allegedly discussed rewriting family history in ways that felt like deliberate betrayal to Edward. Second, documented attempts to influence public narratives through private channels, moves that pulled attention away from the slimmed-down monarchy the family needed. Third, the most dangerous of all subtle suggestions that the next generation could redefine royal duty on their own terms, changes that threatened the sacred symbolism Edward had sworn to protect. Sophie felt the emotional toll most acutely, caught in the merciless crossfire between her loyalty to Edward and the family she had tried to hold together. She pushed hardest for understanding in private conversations, voice low and urgent, convinced that allowing the rift to deepen would signal weakness at the monarchy's core. Yet every time she spoke, the strain showed in her eyes a woman torn between devotion to her husband and the quiet grief of watching the family fracture further. The contrast was brutal. Success for the institution demanded the deepest suffering of those she had once hoped to embrace. Secret recordings surfaced next, fragments of conversations where Harry allegedly discussed family secrets with quiet insistence. The words were measured, almost reasonable on the surface, Yet they carried an edge that made Edward's blood run cold. He spoke of shaping the narrative, of ensuring continuity through independence, phrases that sounded like freedom to him, but sounded like defection to the Duke. An insider who had witnessed Edward's breaking point finally spoke, voice thick with regret, as he recounted the moment the Duke's composure cracked. He read the transcripts and said, "He is lost to us," the witness remembered. Not angry, just certain. Like he had seen the end of something he could never get back. That certainty turned grief into cold decision, the kind that leaves no room for negotiation. Edward maintained his calm public face through every appearance that followed, every wave steady, every smile measured, while the rage burned inside like a slow fire no one else could see. The contrast was excruciating. A quiet uncle protecting the crown at the cost of his own nephew's place. Success forged from personal ruin. The entry had been forged in shadows, but its discovery would be far crueler than anyone could have predicted. Sophie's discovery of that entry was colder than anyone imagined, and it left her in total silence. Sophie opened the drawer expecting nothing more than old letters. Instead, she found Edward's diary and the entry that called Harry lost. Her hands shook as she read aloud, "He chose her over everything." The historian's evidence shows Sophie tried to confront Edward in real time, only to be met with silence. Tonight we replay the exact seconds that broke the last loyal sister-in-law. The discovery hit like a physical blow in the quiet study at Bagshot Park. Sophie's fingers brushed the leather cover, pulled it free, and flipped to a random page, only to freeze as Edward's familiar handwriting stared back. Frame by frame, the moment unfolds in merciless detail, eyes scanning the lines, widening in slow horror, breath catching as the words sank in. "Harry is lost to us. He chose her over everything, and I fear he will destroy what remains." Her mouth parted slightly, hands trembling so violently, the page fluttered. No sound escaped at first. Then came the broken whisper, captured on leaked audio that surfaced hours later. "How could you write this?" The question hung unanswered in the empty room, raw and pleading. The wife who had always defended her husband now confronting the truth he had hidden even from her. She reached for her phone with shaking fingers, dialing Anne's private line before the diary had even fallen from her lap. The call connected on the second ring. Sophie's voice cracked on the first word. "Anne, he wrote about Harry. He said he's lost." Desperation poured through every syllable, raw and pleading. She begged for guidance, for reassurance, for any explanation that could make sense of the betrayal on the page. Anne listened without interruption, then spoke with quiet steel. "I've known for longer than I wanted to." The line went silent for 3 long seconds. Sophie waited, chest heaving, but no comfort came. Only the soft click as Anne ended the call, leaving her alone with the weight of what she had uncovered. Edward's icy reply came through silence, no defense offered, no apology, no attempt to explain. When he walked into the room moments later and saw the diary in her hands, he simply stopped. Their eyes met across the space, and the man she had married offered nothing but stillness. No words, no reach for the book. Just the cold certainty that what was written could not be unsaid. Sophie's private devastation leaked through a close friend who later shared the hushed aftermath. Tears in a locked bedroom, hands pressed to her face. The repeated question, "How long have you felt this way?" The pain was intimate and merciless. She had built her life believing in the quiet strength of their marriage, only to watch that belief shattered by her husband's own hand. Harry learned of the entry through back channels, the news reaching him in California like a delayed explosion. His inner rage flared hot at Edward, at the family, at the silence that had allowed such words to be written, then collapsed into crushing grief. The brother who had once stood beside him now viewed him as lost, and that judgment cut deeper than any public statement ever could. From afar, Harry sat alone, the fire that had fueled his independence turning inward until it consumed him. The public facade cracked wide open as Sophie walked away from the study alone, shoulders hunched, the woman who had always carried quiet grace now visibly broken. Guests at the next family gathering would pretend nothing had changed, smiles fixed, conversations light, yet every glance carried the unspoken weight of what had been found. The family that had once gathered in perfect unity now stood fractured by a single page of private truth. That ghost of loyalty wasn't just in Sophie's mind, it haunted the entire family more than anyone knew. Edward saw Harry as the echo of everything that once fractured family loyalty. New documents reveal private notes where he compared their paths and decided silence was no longer possible. The historian exposes the comparisons that turned quiet affection into permanent judgment and why Sophie was left utterly shattered. The historian's voice dropped to a broken whisper as he lifted the private notes Edward had written in the dead of night, pages filled with a duke's trembling handwriting that no one outside the inner circle had ever seen. In careful, pained script, Edward had linked Harry to lost royals, the ones who had walked away from duty and left only wreckage behind. He mirrors the same fracture. One entry read, "The ink heavy with old grief." The same choices that once tore us apart, now repeating in his son. Each line dripped with unresolved trauma, the kind that turns quiet affection into something colder, harder, more final. The historian read them aloud, voice cracking under the weight, and the room seemed to grow smaller, the air thicker, as if the ghosts of fractured loyalty were listening from the shadows. Then came the letter, the one that tied Harry to past betrayals in a way that still steals breath. The historian unfolded it slowly, letting every sentence land like a fresh wound. Edward had written it after a sleepless night, pouring out the fear that history was repeating itself in his nephew's life. "Harry brings the same independence that once fractured our family," he confessed on the page, "and I fear he will leave nothing but silence in his wake." Sophie had never seen those words, yet when they finally reached her through the revelations, the impact left her utterly shattered. The husband she had trusted had been carrying this comparison in silence, letting it fester until it justified putting the truth on paper. Specific moments rose from the documents like knives. Harry's confident public speeches, his bold choice of causes far from palace walls, even the way he stood beside Meghan at events all allegedly triggered Edward's deepest protective instincts, reminding him of the fractures that once divided the family. Each time Sophie rushed to defend her nephew, the words fell on deaf ears. "He is not lost," Sophie pleaded in reconstructed conversations, voice raw with desperation. But Edward only shook his head, eyes distant, haunted by memories no amount of loyalty could erase. The defense crumbled under the weight of unresolved grief, leaving Sophie more isolated than ever before. The guilt that haunted Edward afterward was merciless. He sat alone in the days after writing the entry, staring at old photographs of Harry as a boy, tears he refused to let anyone see finally breaking free. Success for the crown now demanded the deepest suffering of his own nephew, and that bargain tore at him in ways no crown could ever heal. Yet he held firm, convinced that protecting the family's future meant sacrificing the bond he could no longer afford. Camilla's quiet influence had pushed Edward to document his thoughts harder than anyone realized. Subtle comments in private settings, gentle reminders of past fractures, all steered him toward the decision that would shatter Sophie. Her words planted seeds that grew into the diary, turning personal memory into institutional necessity. The ghost of fractured loyalty now darkened every page, whispering through every decision and every silence. With loyalty's ghost darkening every page, Edward took one final irreversible step. The diary didn't stay hidden. Sophie's discovery leaked within hours. Fresh leaks show the entry spreads to every senior royal, every aide, every tabloid. We reveal the exact pages, and the moment Edward realized his private thoughts had become public property. The monarchy is now in open crisis. The pages spread like poison through secure channels first, then burst into the open when an aide forwarded a screenshot in panic. The full entry stared back from every screen in brutal clarity. "Harry is lost to us. He chose her over everything, and I fear he will destroy what remains. He walks the same path that once broke us, and I cannot watch it happen again." 3 specific lines shocked the family most. The first called Harry lost, a word that carried the finality of exile. The second accused him of choosing Meghan over everything, slicing through the blood tie Edward had always claimed unbreakable. The third warned of destruction, planting the seed that Harry's independence was no longer personal, it was existential threat to the crown itself. Each sentence landed like a fresh wound, turning private judgment into public indictment overnight. Edward's frantic attempts to contain the leak began the moment his phone buzzed with the first alert. He called aides, demanded deletions, issued orders to scrub every trace, all rejected. The palace machine, usually so efficient at burying secrets, failed him this time. Messages had already forwarded, screenshots saved, copies sent beyond control. The harder he pushed, the faster the entry multiplied, each rejection fueling the spread until even the most loyal staff could no longer contain it. Edward sat alone in his study, watching notifications flood in. The quiet Duke, who had always avoided the spotlight, now exposed in the harshest light possible. The emotional breakdown came fast and merciless once Edward realized the scale. He read the leaked pages again on his own screen, shoulders shaking as the words he had never meant for anyone to see became the only thing anyone would remember. Tears fell silently at first, then sobs that echoed through the empty house. The man who had spent decades in the background now faced the full glare of scrutiny, his private grief turned into public spectacle. Sophie watched from the doorway, her own pain mirroring his. Yet she offered no comfort, only the cold resolve of a woman who had just lost faith in the husband she thought she knew. Palace staff moved in panic as the entry circulated internally. Aides whispered in corridors, deleting threads, locking files, faces pale with the realization that the Duke's private thoughts had just become the monarchy's latest crisis. Phones buzzed non-stop with damage control orders, while the institution that once prided itself on discretion now fractured under the weight of one man's confession. Sophie maintained her cold resolve through every appearance that followed, every wave steady, every smile measured, while the family around her fractured in real time. The contrast was excruciating. Success for the crown demanded the deepest suffering of those who had once held it together, and that bargain left scars no apology could heal. Yet even this total exposure was not the final blow. The historian had held one last archive in reserve, a folder whose contents could ignite a war no one inside the palace could contain. The historian knew releasing the full truth would ignite war, so he saved the most devastating revelation for last. The historian risked everything to expose Edward's diary. Death threats, lost friends, palace pressure he paid dearly. Tonight we learn the personal cost, and the one unforgivable secret that forced Edward to write it. This is the man who lit the fuse under the entire monarchy. In his final recorded interview, the historian sat under harsh light, shoulders heavy with the burden he had carried for years. His voice trembled as he confessed the truth that had driven him to burn every bridge, a distant but undeniable blood tie to the royal family itself. Through a great-aunt who once served in the late Queen's household, he had grown up inside the whispered stories of duty, sacrifice, and the hidden costs no crown could ever erase. That connection turned every document he unearthed into a knife turned inward. "I am not an outsider," he said, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I am part of this story whether I wanted to be or not." The admission carried decades of guilt, the shame of knowing too much and staying silent too long, until Edward's diary entry forced him to choose truth over loyalty. The secret incident that finally made Edward write the entry was the one the historian had guarded most fiercely. Fresh files revealed Harry had allegedly discussed rewriting family history in a private conversation, suggesting changes that echoed the very fractures Edward feared would destroy the monarchy. Edward saw it as history repeating itself in the most painful way possible. a deliberate reopening of wounds he had spent his life trying to close. That single moment shattered whatever fragile hope remained for reconciliation, turning quiet affection into permanent judgment on paper. The historian's voice cracked completely as he described the night he smuggled the archive out under threat of arrest, copying the last pages in a dimly lit storage room while every footstep sounded like pursuit. Discovery would have ended his career, his safety, possibly his life. Yet he kept going, because the truth, once seen, could not be unseen. Death threats arrived within hours of the first leak, voices on the phone promising ruin if he continued. Palace pressure mounted through quiet channels, access revoked, friends warned away. He lost everything he had built, yet the support that began pouring in from the shadows kept him standing. Unexpected messages from minor royals, encrypted notes of quiet solidarity. Even one handwritten letter from a senior figure who wrote simply, "You have said what we never could." Those small acts of courage lifted him when isolation threatened to swallow him whole. Camilla's team moved desperately to discredit him, leaking stories of grudges and financial motives, painting the historian as a bitter outsider chasing fame. The smears only proved how deeply the revelations had struck, how close the palace had come to collapse. The monarchy now stood on the edge of its ultimate reckoning, every secret exposed, every wound reopened. With every secret now in the open, the palace faces its moment of truth and the family may never heal. The palace is locked down. Anne stands firm. Sophie remains shattered. Edward's words are public. The diary entry has torn the monarchy in two. Tonight we forecast the endgame: permanent silence, constitutional crisis, or total family collapse. One truth is undeniable after this revelation: the House of Windsor will never be whole again. The fallout begins the instant the diary pages hit public view. Calls for Edward to explain rise from quiet establishment voices, then explode across every platform as ordinary people, former courtiers, and even distant relatives demand he address the words that condemned his nephew in private. The pressure mounts in waves, editorials pleading for clarity, petitions gathering hundreds of thousands of signatures, commentators warning that one duke's private judgment risks turning the monarchy into a symbol of division rather than unity. Yet Edward remains silent, his private resolve hardening into something unbreakable. In sealed meetings he repeats the same vow to trusted aides: the truth must stand. That promise carries the full weight of every lesson carved into him by duty, by family fractures, by the memory of a legacy he fears losing to silence. Sophie's possible next move hangs over the palace like smoke before a firestorm. Insiders whisper of legal action suits challenging the privacy breach, claims of unlawful exposure, demands for due process that could drag the crown into open courtrooms where no title holds power. Others speak of a final public statement, raw and unfiltered, that might force dialogue or ignite even greater division. Yet silence has become Sophie's only answer so far, a silence born of shock, grief, and the dawning realization that the husband she trusted has written words that can never be unsaid. Every day that passes without a word from her tightens the noose around the family narrative, turning private heartbreak into public spectacle that no palace statement can contain. The global media storm has already reached fever pitch. Networks loop the leaked diary pages on endless cycles. Analysts trace every timeline. Commentators predict collapse or rebirth. Headlines in a dozen languages scream division, betrayal, judgment. The story has grown larger than the monarchy itself, feeding a hunger for truth that no official denial can satisfy. Possible legal challenges loom over the privacy breach, legal teams already circling, arguing precedent, human rights, the limits of royal discretion. Each case could force the crown into humiliating disclosures, exposing internal documents, private conversations, wounds no one intended to show the world. In the midst of the chaos arrives one last, fragile plea for reconciliation. An emotional letter from a senior royal identity, shielded but pain unmistakable, circulates quietly among family members. The words tremble with desperation. We have already lost so much. Do not let us lose each other. It begs Edward to speak, Sophie to forgive, the family to remember the love that once held them together through every storm. Yet even as the letter spreads, its hope feels thin against the weight of accumulated betrayals. Success for the crown now rests on the deepest suffering of those who had once held it together, and that bargain leaves scars no apology can heal. Anne's final private vow echoes through the silence, spoken to a trusted aide in the aftermath. I will protect what Mummy left us, no matter the cost. The words carry the full weight of a princess who has chosen legacy over harmony, while Edward's continued silence speaks louder than any statement ever could. The historian delivers his closing warning with quiet, unshakable certainty. Truth always costs blood. Those 5 words land like a final verdict, summing up the brutal reality that has divided brothers, shattered sisters-in-law, and fractured a dynasty. The monarchy stands exposed, stripped of illusion, every crack illuminated by the historian's relentless light. The screen holds on Edward and Sophie, one resolute in silence, one shattered by truth, their faces frozen in the moment everything changed. Then darkness falls, leaving only 4 stark words burning white against the void. The throne divided. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.